We're 16!
We can get our L plates. This little podcast will drive soon enough.
The Gaming Lovers Podcast with Brendo and Jem.
Greetings, one and all. It is the Gaming Lovers Podcast. I am Brendo, occasionally a little bit hyper, as the case is now.
And I'm Jem.
And we are the Gaming Lovers. We love to talk gaming. We love to play gaming and...
Play gaming.
Play gaming. It's what we do.
Welcome to episode number 16 of the Gaming Lovers Podcast.
How sweet.
Oh, it is, isn't it? I'm very excited. We've got some exciting news to talk about, which ties in quite well with our topic for this episode's podcast.
I love when sometimes you say things like that, and I honestly am like, hang on, what's our exciting news? Don't forget. It's been a busy week.
Before we get there, though, gaming goals.
Oh, right into it. No small talk?
No.
No chit-chat?
No.
Okay,
The gaming goals are kind of our chit-chat, let's be honest.
Well, let me tell you a little story. I have a horrific level of love-hate with Dark Souls at the moment.
Uh-huh.
I am up to the final boss and can beat it at any time, but I'm chasing a few trophies.
Of course you are.
Now, I should not have, based off the amount of time I have to play, based off the amount of sleep I've had this week, the amount of work that I've done.
And the backlog that you have before we go to Japan.
Yeah, well, I really did want to play Yakuza 5, which I'll get to that in a second. Dark Souls.
Yep.
This morning's the perfect example. I got terrible sleep, woke up half in a dream, sort of in that deep sleep. Something, my phone forgot to put on silent, so it vibrated next to my head and woke me up, and I was just shot after that. So I decided, well, might as well get up and play some games. That'll help me boost my mood. But no! I played Dark Souls for like 2 hours and didn't succeed in a thing. I'm just distraught. Valuable gaming time, and I think I achieved, I got a weapon. That was it.
There's always days like that, though.
Now, Yakuza 5, I say this every week, the reason I enjoy the Yakuza games, blank. In this case, the reason I enjoy Yakuza games is that the side missions are optional, and in some games, if you're trying to power through them, you would just go, right, main story, minimal side quests. The side quests are really fun, and I have some strange compulsion to do all of them. So I've been doing some basic street racing in a taxi, because you're employed by a taxi company who want you to take down the local street racing thugs. So of course you're doing it in your taxi uniform. You are street racing in your licensed taxi. Doesn't seem like a sound business practice to me.
No.
So I've been doing that, doing a little taxi here and there, and really not doing much, just having that on in the background while the New Japan Pro Wrestling G1 Climax has been rolling around. So that's taken a bit of my attention these past few weeks, but it's been enjoyable.
How's your tipping going with that?
Don't start me on that. So I watch a fair bit of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Jem, not so much. How have you tipped out of the past 3 shows that we've watched? Our score out of 5 block matches. How many have you got?
Correct.
Yes.
I believe my score is perfect at the moment. 5 out of 5.
For 3 shows in a row.
Yeah.
And you tipped these at the start of the actual tournament. That is infuriating. The other thing I have actually been playing, though, to your great surprise, because I didn't tell her this, I'm now officially further than you in Fire Emblem Awakening.
Oh!
What do you think about that?
Enjoy.
Something that's been on your backlog for years.
Yes.
And to the point where you go, hey, I'll buy the sequel because I'll get through the game at some point.
I know, I've been meaning to. It's one of those things... I think I hit a wall my first playthrough, and then I got distracted by other stuff, and then I forgot what the story was about. So it got to that point where it had just been way too long to just jump back in. So I knew I'd have to start from the beginning again. And I was like, do I want to? And have not touched it in a very long time. So at least it's getting some love. Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I am enjoying it.
Good.
It's always annoying though when there's minor spoilers. If you can't pick this from the first time they show up, a mysterious man shows up with a female's voice and female's hair and female mannerisms, and everyone's like, "Hey, who's that guy over there? That man who saved us?" And you're just like, that mask is going to fall off, and everyone's going to be so shocked that, oh, it's actually a woman.
I know, I hate that. I'm like, how stupid are you? How stupid do you think we are? Like, come on.
Anyway, that niggle aside, well, that was synchronicity. That niggle aside, I am greatly enjoying that as well.
Good.
How about just your good self? What have you been up to in the gaming realm the past 7 days?
More Persona 5, pretty much. A little bit of Period Cube, not much. I haven't finished any story arcs as yet, but I've done a lot more of Persona 5, and I think it's been good for me. I've wanted to kind of be distracted this week, so it's been really nice to just jump in. And also, the more I unlock of Tokyo, the more I'm like, hey, we're going to go there, we're going to go there on our trip. I'm so excited, and I'm recognizing more and more of the names of areas that seemed so foreign to me the first time we played it.
Absolutely. That's the thing with any, we can't really talk because in Australia we have towns called Wagga Wagga and Wollongong and
Nanagoon.
just weird things like that, which I'm sure just all seem strange to people who come to visit.
Yeah.
But yeah, all those city, suburbs, parks, locations, it all just looks like a mishmash of syllables to you if you haven't actually got experience in that landscape.
Yeah.
But now if I say to you Harajuku, you know where that is. If I say
Harajuku is slightly more famous than most other places. But there are definitely other prefectures and stuff. When you mention them, like, now I'm like, oh, I know where that is. And I can picture in my mind, like, the map and where it is next to other cities or next to other regions or whatever.
what the landmarks are in each one.
Yes. So it's exciting.
So you're in charge of navigating our side quests when we go to Japan. Is that right?
So long as you navigate us through the train stations and things like that, I'm happy to do other navigation. No worries.
Okie dokie. Now, one thing, with a game like Persona 5, a lot of the joy from your first time through is discovering plot points, experiencing those social gatherings with your AI friends. You obviously wouldn't have that on your second playthrough. But how does it compare to your first time through?
I'm enjoying more in the sense of there's a lot of hidden clues very early on that, you don't click until you've actually played through the game, and then you go back and you're like, oh my goodness, they hinted at this from the start. So it's got a lot of depth to it. And that's, always a good mark of well-written games or TV shows or anything like that, when you can go back and you see things that have been planted from the get-go. As far as just interacting with your friends, it's nice. It's like any other story game, where I kind of know where the story's going, but I will forget, like, the nuances or the little jokes, or I might have missed bits because I was concentrating on something else the first time. So this time around, I get to pick up on things I missed, and I'm having so much fun.
Well, that's all we can ask for video games.
Yeah.
They treat you well, unlike Dark Souls. Why do I do this to myself?
Share the love. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/thegaminglovers. So I have some exciting news.
Oh my goodness.
Which I found online, and I shared on our Twitter. If you want to you can find all the links on our website at thegaminglovers.com, all our links to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc., all on there. Horizon Zero Dawn, easily one of our top games in recent years, has been one of the best games in the last 5 years.
100% agree with you there.
It is being turned into a board game.
Now, some people may think that's ridiculous and I have no need for this. Some people may think that is just beating a dead horse to get that money out of it, because
There's a
Such
gross image.
It's a terrible, terrible thing. However, we are not most people because we are both very excited about this.
Yes. Some things translate well to tabletop. Not everything, though. So we're going to dig through some video games that have turned into board games.
Before we jump away from that, did you know that Horizon Zero Dawn board game will be canon?
Interesting. So they're adding... I wonder if they're going to add anything to the story or if it's just going to be fleshing out maybe some of the side characters and stuff like that from the video game. The only thing that makes me sad is that, we won't have the lovely Ashley Birch voicing Aloy for us through the game.
Oh, you could rig up a soundboard and just mash a few buttons each time you make a move.
Or get Crispin Freeman to say, scary, threatening things. We enjoy a good tabletop game. And recently, I think for Christmas, I got you the Fallout board game, which is really detailed and you can actually play it as a solo player, which is super rare for board games.
Yeah, it has scenarios, it's campaign-based. You can play against what in a video game world you would probably call AIs, but they have preset behaviours, your imaginary opponents.
Yes, exactly. And we tested this out just the other night with our good mates Steve and Mel, who you may remember from episode 3 of the Gaming Lovers podcast with the Overcooked Challenge.
Overcooked Tag Team Champion of the world!
The ones that hold the world record for that one level. They sat down with us and they have never played Fallout, so they didn't know the lore, they didn't know what things were referencing per se, so they were going in blind, and we wanted to see if they would enjoy the experience just playing a board game as it is without knowing all the references and stuff like that. Because, to be fair, a lot of people will buy these games, the board games, because they love the video games. But would it be accessible or would it be enjoyable for those who have no clue what they're walking into? And that's what we wanted to find out.
Yeah, there's definitely no shortage of board games. Board games have almost become more popular than ever before, I think. It used to be, hey, come over for some board games. You'd be like, okay, nah. What are we going to do, Scrabble?
Nerd.
That's ridiculous. I was a video game nerd in the 90s, and I would still call that nerdy. But if you're a fan of Horizon Zero Dawn, for example, you would get more enjoyment from the Horizon Zero Dawn game. If you're a fan of Fallout, like you and my good self are, we would enjoy a Fallout-based board game with super mutants and the Capital Wasteland and Nuka-Cola and
the caps. And filling out the special and so that was interesting trying to explain to them what the special stats meant with the strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck, and all those sorts of things. But it's cool. Like, for me, I love the detail that went into this game because A, it was not cheap, and B, it makes it feel like, hey, this is just really a tabletop version of this video game. Like, they've put everything in it. Yeah. It is detailed. It is thorough.
It has quests. It has side quests. Yeah. It has loot. It has skill checks.
You can get rads and, you've got your health and things too. And you can use VATs and things for attacks and such.
You can be idolised. You can be vilified.
So many little things. And that was great for us as fans, but I think that was what was daunting for Mel and Steve. When we were playing, they're just like, there's so many rules to try to keep track of. And by the end of the game, they'd gotten into a good groove, but at the beginning, you could just see they looked very overwhelmed at everything in front of them and what they had to remember.
Well, we've played this game once prior. Yeah. I got that for Christmas from you, and thank you very much for that wonderful gift. But we played it once, we were still figuring out the rules, and when it came time to go, hey, we're going to be talking about video game board games. Let's see if you guys will actually enjoy this on its own merits without knowing the Fallout world. And about 90 minutes into the session, I'm like, hang on a second, how long does this game actually go for? I pick up the box to try to find, recommended age 14 and plus. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. All right, here we go. Recommended game time, 2 to 3 hours. I'm like, okay, I'm so sorry. It's like creeping over midnight. I'm there going, well, didn't realise it was that long a game. And like you said, it gets very complex, very complicated. You've got like 12 different decks of cards. You've got about the same again with tokens. You've got quests. You've got factions that have influence. You're trying to get your own influence. Everyone's confused as to what they can do.
Yep, and I accidentally won, and I didn't even realize until later. And you cracked it at me because I had won like maybe half an hour before we officially ended the game.
That's the only reason why I complained, just because I was so tired. And everyone's like, nah, we'll see this game through to the end. And then we hit the end of the game, and then we're all counting up how much influence to sort of see who had second place, basically. And you had influence coming out of your armpits at that point. So,
and I did not realize because I did not completely understand, even though we had played it before. So we were still kind of feeling like novices. We're still learning this board game.
Now, I got a reputation early on that I would be the person who would be bending, if not breaking, the rules to try to get a leg up because I can be quite competitive.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm actually misunderstood. I've been vilified. I'm the one who enforces the rules to make sure it is a fair game so that when I beat you, you will have not a leg to stand on.
Mm.
But the problem is when I'm running a game like the Fallout board game that we did and completely misread one of the rules and we get 2 hours into this session, I'm like, oh, that's actually not how the enemy should be behaving.
Whoops.
I have botched that. Any wonder Melissa got like 6,000 experience by the end of the game because she was killing everything that came anywhere near her.
I'm amazed she didn't die. She handled it pretty well. So, ugh.
Well, to start off, what was their opinion on the Fallout board game?
They enjoyed it. Overall, it was positive. They had fun. They liked the details. We've played a few different board games that aren't too dissimilar to that with House on a Hill, like Betrayal at Baldur's Gate, things like that, which have a kind of a similar feel to it, but maybe not quite as many rules. Close, but not quite. And so I think Mel enjoyed it because she was kicking butt for most of that game. We all thought she was going to win.
It's the general rule of when you're playing a game. If you're doing well,
you enjoy it. And Steve was doing pretty good too. I think he got annoyed because he chose the guy with like the power armor, and so he couldn't move as fast as the rest of us.
He thought this guy looks like a cool stormtrooper looking dude. Problem is he can only move half the speed of everyone else, so everyone's rushing to objectives and poor Sergeant Tortoise is left behind.
Sergeant Tortoise. Yeah, honestly, like even if you haven't played Fallout, it's still an enjoyable board game, but you will absolutely enjoy it way more if you're familiar with the games, if you love the games, and you enjoy board games. I think you need both to get the most out of that kind of experience, or any of these.
Yeah, and even if you don't have any friends that enjoy it, don't forget this can actually be played solo.
Mm-hmm.
There is the advantage with physical board games that you can also get, and this is a case with a lot of games we're going to be talking about, custom rules that people have thought up, things that they've modified in their groups, playing with their friends, they found helps the game flow better or more balanced.
Yeah.
A lot of board games out there have homebrew rules where it's just slightly modified, but potentially for the better.
People have been doing that to board games for years. I mean, the amount of times I sit down to play Uno, which is technically a card game, but the principle still applies.
Yeah.
I'll play it with you, I'll play it with my sisters, I'll play it with family, friends, and the rules will change every time because everyone has their own rules that they've grown up with, and they go, no, this is how you play.
No. There will be official rules, and I will. Where's the instruction book?
I'm sure there are, but no one follows them. No one.
They would if I was.
Okay.
I'm the sheriff in town.
I love it.
All right. What else have we got?
Well, since Dark Souls has been beating my corpse over the head with a giant club recently, what better thing to talk about? Because yes, there is indeed a Dark Souls board game.
Is it as punishing as the video game?
Well, I haven't played it myself, but being the fantastic investigative journalist that I am.
Say that again.
Investigative? I'm investigative. I'm an investigative journalist.
Oh, I love it. Yep.
And that means I have sources. And so I contacted my sources, people who actually have the Dark Souls board game.
Were their names ketchup and mustard?
Sources.
Yes. Teriyaki.
Technically, they're condiments.
They're also known as sauces.
Well, is ketchup a sauce or is it a condiment? Tomato sauce is a sauce.
Well, tomato.
Dark Souls, the board game.
Yes.
Now, this had a Kickstarter that blew well past its expected range.
Mm-hmm.
And the good thing with Kickstarters is they have stretch goals. So it doesn't just have to hit its actual
Main target. Can keep
main
going.
target that people are asking for. You keep going, you get more goodies. Well, Dark Souls itself as a board game is prohibitively expensive. I went shopping in a board game shop the other day and I legitimately thought there was a mistake on the price tag because I'm like, that can't possibly be 170 Australian dollars for a board game.
Ouch.
But guess what? It was. Because I did some
Does it
Googling.
come with the video game inside?
Well, that's just it. You buy a video game maybe for, what, $90 launch, right? Australian prices.
Yeah.
You're expecting to get 20, 40, 100 hours enjoyment out of that. Board games sort of come out, you play them, and unless they really hit it off, they're probably getting shelved again and you'll forget you even own them.
Yeah.
So for a price tag like that, I mean, you do get awesome minifigures, which are always cool. But the key thing with Dark Souls is you go through a grind. You go through a loop, a gameplay loop. You'll start at a bonfire. You'll kill some enemies and get some souls, which is basically experience points. You'll then retreat to either the same or another bonfire if you can survive that long and use those souls to level up. However, you activate that bonfire and rest at it, all the enemies respawn. So guess what you're going to do as you head back into the adventure?
More fighting.
Fighting the same enemies. And for better or, from what I hear, for worse, that grind has been encapsulated in Dark Souls, the board game.
Ooh.
Now, I have another source,
Ooh.
a fellow train driver. I thought, hey, we're talking about board games. I know just the guy to talk to about that because he has a room full of board games. And if you mention the term board game around him, he's probably going to talk for a long time. I got an urgent voicemail from him because he saw my text message and he said, Brendo, call me as soon as you get this. And I thought, oh, does he need a shift swapped or something? No, he just wanted to talk about board games because I texted him about it. But he was prohibited from buying Dark Souls, the board game,
Really?
by his wife,
Too
who
expensive.
also is no stranger to board games, because she said the content would not be acceptable. So my brain starts thinking, what, is the theme too dark? Is it, too grisly for her? No, the content meaning the grind. She heard it was just basically a grinding loop and wanted nothing to do with that sort of board game. There's better board games to play. They are the reports. These are what the people are saying about
fair
Dark
enough,
Souls,
though.
the board game.
I mean, if that's not what you want out of your experience, then you would opt for something else and opt for something far cheaper as well. So, good on her.
Now, to be fair, these people, the first source A, if you want to make it ketchup, we can make it ketchup. That's fine. They said that they actually did enjoy playing the board game, and they have a lot of experience with the Souls games themselves.
Yep.
They did also say, similar to us discussing about Fallout, they hadn't played with people who haven't played the Souls games.
Okay.
But because of you have that lore to build on your experiences with the shared media,
Yeah.
you would enjoy it more with that knowledge of the Souls pain of playing Dark Souls.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's about Source A says that the length and difficulty of the game's probably about right, but there's not really a big payoff. Like in the Dark Souls game, you get a sense of accomplishment when you defeat a boss, but your game just sort of ends in the board game. And yay, we did it. Now what? Let's get popcorn. So, these are what the people say. I just report with my investigative journalism.
That is when you have to start adding your own stipulations to make the games more interesting.
Oh no.
Just saying.
Scary. The last point to make about Dark Souls, the board game, is that in the actual video games of Dark Souls, with the exception of occasionally a cheap boss hit, if you fail, it's going to be your fault. You've probably picked bad armor and you're too slow, or you've picked the wrong weapon type, or you're simply just bad at timing your dodges. Yes, I will hold up my hand to that one. But when you play a board game, what usually defines your success?
The roll of the dice.
And you know it, and because of that, it's all out of your hands. So success or failure doesn't really feel like a consequence of your actions. You just feel more like a victim. And when you play Dark Souls, you feel like a victim enough as it is. You don't need Lady Luck cursing you as well.
Dark Souls would be an interesting universe, though, for the basis of like a D&D game. If you were playing Dungeons and Dragons, but in that universe, I mean, it would be very dark, but it would be very interesting. It's already got a lot of depth to it. So it would lend itself to that kind of format, I think, pretty well.
Well, look at you.
I think I just peeled back even more nerd. Go back.
Cover that
down.
nerd.
Shh.
How dare you show that much nerd?
Okay, moving right along. One of my favourites that we had, and I think you got this as another Christmas present.
Hey, I told you, Brendo is an easy man to buy presents for. When it comes to Christmas,
actually.
when it comes to birthday, give him something gaming related. He's a happy boy.
Yes, and this was the Monopoly Gamers Edition, which needs to be clarified. It's very different from most Monopoly games that come out that are just basically, new skins, new coats of paint. Plants vs. Zombies, Pokemon, there's Uncharted, Skyrim, World of Warcraft, even Sonic Boom.
Excuse me?
Yes.
I did not know there was a Sonic Boom.
Has a Monopoly. Why, I don't know, but it does.
How much does that go for?
No offense. No, don't you dare.
I want to see where you go. Who do you play as?
But Monopoly Gamers is so much better because it says it's Monopoly, but it's kind of not. It's brand new rules. It's got all the classic Mario characters, which is what it's based around, and you have boss fights against Bowser's minions and
Koopa
kids.
Kids.
Yes. Each character you have has different like power-up abilities, and I think the kids always tend to fight over Yoshi because Yoshi's got a pretty good one.
Yeah, and just like the scourge of the gaming world when it comes to additional DLC, yes, board games can get DLC, and you
Yes.
can buy extra characters that have extra abilities. And yeah, I bought them all.
Of course you did. They are quite cute figurines, though. It just from a collector's standpoint, they're nice. They're not too like dodgy looking or anything like that. They're decent quality.
Well, there you go. We were planning to do a Dungeons and Dragons day. We
We'll
can
just
use
use
Mario
Mario.
can join.
Bowser can be like an enemy.
We don't have Bowser.
We don't?
No.
Oh.
He only came with the deluxe edition.
Well, maybe in the Mario Kart one, there will be a Bowser.
Yes.
There was a new Mario Kart just came out, and that one is like you race around the board. So I love it. I just love that they have different rules because no offense to Monopoly, but I hate it.
Yeah, Monopoly is a game that can feel like it has no end in sight.
Yeah.
Arguments break out here, there, and everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to Monopoly Gamer, you have a set amount of boss fights. You get through those. The game's over. You're dropping coins. You're collecting coins. You're hitting people with shells.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting inked.
Yes. They bring in so many of the features from the game, so it has more personality, which I think is key. It, for me, because I think it has a faster pace than most Monopoly, it is far more enjoyable to play. I think when I'm playing a board game with people, and especially when you've got a lot of people, I get antsy. I can't stand it. Like, I'm like going, they're taking forever on their turn. And
That's only because I've read the rules in Fallout wrong.
But, like, it's much more fun when the pace keeps moving because then you have to stay focused in the game. Whereas if people are taking, like upward of 20 minutes on their turn, it's frustrating. It's too long.
Are you playing with the sloth from Zootopia? It
I-
can feel like it sometimes.
Sometimes the people that we play with are like sloths.
Oh.
In that sense, they just take forever to make their decisions. So that is one of the reasons why I do prefer Monopoly Gamer over just normal Monopoly and some other board games. Just it's much faster paced comparatively.
I agree completely.
You're listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. Want to join the conversation? Visit thegaminglovers.com. Record your comment or question by clicking on the button on the right-hand side. And you could be featured in the next podcast.
This was a triumph.
Doo-doo, doo-doo.
I'm making a note here. Huge success.
Doo-doo-doo-doo.
It's hard to overstate my satisfaction.
Doo-doo.
Aperture science. We do what we must because we can. For the good of all of us, except the ones who are dead. We played that as our farewell song at our wedding.
Yep. Hopefully all the guests survived.
We're still alive. But I just liked the opening line of "This was a triumph."
I'm making a note here. It was indeed a huge success.
It was. We had a pretty decent, I would say, very low incidence rate.
As
As
all
far
good
as
weddings
wedding
should
go,
have.
well, hey, there could have been far worse things. That's for sure. We only had minor flubs. I think the day went pretty smoothly.
The only one that really stands out is that Kingdom Hearts music stopping like early. But just should have got a looped audio clip. Anyway.
Inquivity.
Yes, well, all right, let's move on from complicated words. Portal is next. You love a good bit of Portal.
I do.
Portal,
I love GLaDOS.
The uncooperative cake acquisition game.
Does it come with GLaDOS? Is she trying to kill us all?
I do know one thing. It has cake.
Cake! So the cake is not a lie. Oh my goodness. It's like tiny Barbie cake.
Tiny cakes.
It's black cake. Someone burnt the cake. How could you burn the cake?
There you go. GLaDOS is present.
I wouldn't want to play it. I would just want to be pretending to be GLaDOS and I would be insulting everyone else playing. That's how I would play that game.
Well, you love cake, so you'd probably be hoarding the cake. Or would you eat it? Maybe you wouldn't do very well at this game.
It depends on the type of cake. Is it chocolate mousse cake?
It's probably made of plastic since it's a video game piece.
Oh.
But if we're using our imagination, it can be whatever cake you like.
Well, it can't be any worse than eating Tide Pods, so...
Yeah, let's just... I don't understand humans these days. So, if you want a quick video game, board game, Portal is probably the way to go. Its usual session time is probably going to be about 30 to 40 minutes. It's a 2 to 4 player game, which is always good to get some friends around for a quick board game here and there.
Mm-hmm.
If it goes well, you can play another round. It's better than trying to get people together for a Fallout board game that goes for 3 hours
Yes.
and finishes at 1 a.m. and my brain still hurts. I have a video game board game hangover.
It kind of hit that point in the evening too, and we all past the time we normally go to sleep, and we're just exhausted. But the game hadn't ended yet because I didn't realize I had won, and we just started laughing at the stupidest things, which can be fun, but not the best when you have to drive home.
Back on track.
Sorry.
Portal 2, you have a squad of little people that, guess what you're making them do? They're going through test chambers.
Woohoo!
And at the end of players' turns, some of the test chambers collapse into oblivion, and whoever has the most people on there gets a cake piece. Doesn't that sound like fun?
Your job is to kill off the testers?
Well, how did GLaDOS do it?
With neurotoxins.
Deadly neurotoxin. Perfect. But it's been rated as a huge success. Like I said, it's a quick game.
I'm making a note here. Huge success.
I can't believe I didn't think of that. But thank you very much for picking up that lazy slow ball that I just pitched
Cheap
there.
pop.
I just want this game purely for the little figure of the companion cube,
Aww.
which would look more accurate than our one from Lego Dimensions,
Aww.
which is a bit boxy and...
But it's a cube. How can it be too boxy?
Well, it is. It makes more sense when you see it.
I know.
I feel dumb. And guess what? If there wasn't enough of a sales pitch to get Portal, the uncooperative cake acquisition game, you get a Steam key for a copy of Portal 2 when you buy it.
Oh, nice. See,
How's that?
that's what you should do, is that, like, that helps justify, I think, the price of some of these games, is if you had the game that it's based on as part of the package deal.
Yeah. So if you've ever wanted a little power trip to kill miniature humans in exchange for delicious moist cake, it is delicious and moist, then maybe Portal, the uncooperative cake acquisition game, is for you. And yes, I insist on using its full name.
Well, there is a difference. The same people who made the Fallout game that we were talking about earlier, Fantasy Flight Games, have also made the Witcher adventure game, which is obviously based off The Witcher, which
Witcher?
which lends itself to being a board game really well. Especially these guys do the board games with a lot of detail, as we said from the Fallout one, is that they get all of the nuances of the video game and they recreate it quite accurately. What's interesting about this one, though, is that not only did they make the board game based off the video game, but then the board game got turned into a digital version that you can play on Steam. So you can play a video game that is based off a board game, which is based off a video game.
Which is based off a novel. This is fantastic. How far can we keep this chain going? Can we get a live stage show production of The Witcher adventure
Board
video
game.
board game, video game novel?
I don't know.
Let's keep this going.
You need to get the rights.
This is fantastic.
And then there'll be a puppet version of that, of the stage version. And then the puppet version will be turned into a Netflix series.
There you go. It's on my Google Play Store as well. Get the Witcher adventure game on my phone. I'll just download that now. Never mind. What's going on? No, just kidding.
So again, it's more of the same, where you've got your different campaigns and your side quests and really cool figurines. And for me, I think I've said this a couple of times, it's another game that would work really well with also a D&D setting, or that could be used as the lore, and then you could build upon that. So you could possibly even use pieces from this board game to create, if you wanted to start a fresh campaign and use that and use the little figurines and go from there if you wanted to create your own original stories, but in that lore, in that world.
Just like what we said about Fallout, it can look a little daunting for new players. If you don't know the lore, you don't even know what a Witcher is, then you might be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah.
But yeah, they like their scenario-based games, old Fantasy Flight, and for better or for worse, if you really love it, there'll be a lot for you to dig into. But yeah, you'll have to see how you go, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something to consider. If you're a fan of The Witcher, not to be a hipster or anything, but I played The Witcher 1 back when the series really wasn't that successful. And then it just boomed into oblivion when The Witcher 3 came out. Everyone just jumped on the bandwagon. And yeah, well. Having said that, I never actually played 2 properly, so I can't really brag too much about being a Witcher fan.
I remember getting annoyed at The Witcher 3 because it kind of slightly crossed over with Dragon Age Inquisition, I think. And Dragon Age Inquisition was getting heralded and getting a lot of Game of the Year awards. And then The Witcher 3
just came
and just overshadowed it. And I'm like, no, they're both good games, guys. So, and I think depending on what camp you sit in, some people are much more like The Witcher is better, and some people are much more Dragon Age people, and that's okay.
So for you, it's more like a football team that you have no real opinion on, but they're playing against your team, so you hate them. Is that right?
A little. I'm just salty that they stole our thunder.
And our thunder. You're officially a Dragon Age member.
Well, hey, I helped do the beta test for Inquisition, so I feel a slight bit of ownership. Very slight. I'm protective. I think that has been well established by now.
Oh, yeah. One thing that a lot of people do actually praise the Witcher adventure game for is its injury system. Just like our Fallout 1 that we have experience with, we keep referring to that because it's what we have.
We played it yesterday.
You can take 2 main actions on your turn, like travelling or investigating. However, you can be injured, which means although you don't die, you can lose that ability until it gets healed.
You'll be weakened.
Now, the thing is, you don't just have one injury, you can get multiple. So basically, you have your options whittled down for your turn the more injured you get, until you're just a useless mannequin, basically, who can't move. It's a nice system to sort of slow people down. You know, you still have consequences for failing things, but you're not actually eliminated from the game by dying because you can't die in the game.
Yeah.
But again, with a lot of these complicated games, a lot of people from my research has said that using custom rules does make these sort of games flow better. Unofficial expansions, people 3D print their own miniatures and, make and laminate their own cards to add to the decks and things like that. It's kind of cool if you're creative and you have that equipment.
Yeah.
I'd
Just
love
have
it.
a 3D printer lying around.
Oh, yeah.
How much are they again?
Oh, I picked one up at the garage sale last week for... No, I didn't, actually.
Callum is dreaming. I love the castle. Okay. There is also a board game based off Gears of War.
Ooh.
So a game that is like heavy shooter based.
Guess who made that?
Fantasy Flight?
You know it.
Woo! I'm interested to see how they translate like a shooter into an actual tabletop board game, because I feel like for the most part, a lot of the stuff that we've talked about has been more RPG style
Swords
stuff.
and shields.
Exactly, more slightly turn-based action or things that might have even like a hidden like D&D elements that are, calculated behind the scenes in the video games. Whereas this is very skill-based when it comes to it being a shooter. So that seems interesting, trying to translate that into a board game and keeping the same excitement levels.
You're still rolling the dice. You're still letting Lady Luck decide if you're successful. That is partly why I love board games. It's partly why I've always liked the element of chance, is that you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I like rolling a dice to decide what's for dinner. I like, playing games that, like Betrayal, that we talked about before. Betrayal House on the Hill. You don't know what that next card is that's going to attach to your mansion. You don't know who's going to be the traitor. There's all those sort of things. I like that, but it can also be frustrating when things are outside of your direct control. Another co-op scenario theme-based game with this Gears of War game. And guess what? We actually get to relive some moments from the actual video games in the Gears of War board game. So unlike the other ones where it basically takes the setting but has an entirely new campaign, this is sort of more like a greatest hits here and there. A couple of the key missions from the actual video games make an appearance. So maybe you're a Gears fan. Would you give it a shot? You have not played Gears of War.
No.
Would you give it a shot?
Only if John DiMaggio made a cameo in the game.
Spectacular. Let's have him over for dinner, and then we
Yes.
can play Gears of War together. Do you know how close I came to saying God of War then?
I'm sure he'd be up for playing a tabletop version of God of War with us.
I roll my boy dice.
Boy.
I have successfully said boy.
That's a funny side note.
Mm-hmm.
If you could choose like a celebrity or like a voice actor, maybe someone specific to video games, who would you want to actually play a game, like a board game version, like if you could play with them?
Give me any of our favourite voice actors, which just so happen to all have ended up on Critical Role, and I think we've got a good time on our hands.
Mm-hmm.
Any voice actor that's flexible, you're not physically, I meant more vocal range. You looked at me so strange then. Laura Bailey, for example,
Yep.
jumps in and out of character like that.
Yeah.
You know, people like, maybe Troy Baker.
The truth comes out.
Oh, yeah, he's cool.
You're blushing. He would be a lot of fun, though.
Don't make it weird. All right, there are still plenty more. I know there is a World of Warcraft. There is a Bioshock Infinite. But the one I really want to talk about is XCOM.
Now that would actually translate really well to tabletop.
It may translate better than you actually imagine, my dear, because guess what? What is the number one thing that you experience when you play XCOM?
Death.
I was going at one level a bit higher than that. I was talking pressure.
No, we have this thing when we play XCOM. We name every new soldier after a family member or friend and inevitably wipe everybody out. Almost everybody.
Not intentionally, though.
No, obviously not, but it's a hard game. It is not easy. And yeah, we have had, like, you know how they do like a memorial wall of all the people that have fallen in battle throughout the course of the game. And yeah, it's just like lists all of our relatives and friends.
Yeah, when I did the original run of XCOM, I had all my friends and family be the soldiers, and it was pretty terrible to see who actually survived and who did not. And then when I did XCOM 2, I decided to go the celebrity route and pick wrestlers from both the WWE and the independents. Well, I had some Ring of Honor stars on there too, so sort of mixed it up. Just a sprinkling of different wrestlers from around the world and see who saved the day. Good on you, Peyton Royce.
Yeah.
You are a superstar.
Aussies to the rescue.
But the XCOM video game, you were complaining about when video. I've turned Japanese.
Video.
Video. You were complaining earlier how much you hate it when turns just drag and the board game doesn't feel like it's ever going to end.
That would be that.
Well, XCOM has a companion app.
Oh.
And you have played One Night Ultimate Werewolf with us?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
The app basically is the game master and instructs when things happen, when this person's turn is up. Panic has broken out in South Africa. Things like that. So, perfect for when you've got those stupid people who play video games, board games, any type of games, and just take forever. Because we have an app which has a time limit which equals pressure. So it is the perfect XCOM experience. Alien assaults might suddenly happen out of the middle of nowhere. And what I love about having an app as an accessory to a game, it reminds me of the old school. Now, let's not go too far back. Let's think of DVD games, like Seen It, for example.
Oh,
You'd have that
man.
aspect of randomness.
Yep.
You know, it'd be seemingly always the same clip somehow anyway. But it would spin the thing, it'd say, yep, here's your turn, this is your scene, bang, and you're playing a board game with a DVD. It's interactive. It's excellent. It's not that far from where we are talking about XCOM, you know, an interactive, digital, board game combined. I've heard, one of my sources instructed me, that purists despise this blending of technology. How strange. However, if we go even further back, have you ever played a VHS board game combination?
No, but I have seen it on Community.
Well, let me tell you, where I got my board games from was usually the discount rack at World for Kids.
One for kids, one for kids.
W4K! We would pick up the board games that people had sat on or that maybe got returned without a piece.
Aww.
You know, things like that. The unloved ones. My introduction to Star Trek, believe it or not, was actually Star Trek, the video board game, where you had a cassette you would put in. You would be on a starship moving your pieces, and it would just be like flying through space on your TV with a countdown clock, counting down from an hour to 0. And at random intervals, a Klingon would show up on the screen, and you must address him by his proper name and say, yes, Captain Agblog, whatever his name was. I can't remember. And then if you didn't, you got penalised. And he would say, you there, the person who, like, because it just shows up, 48 minutes left to go. And then you just know he's going to show up because it's linear, because it's a cassette. And he would say, you, the player who's now playing, you're now in stasis and you can't move. Goodbye. And just vanish. And then you're just like, well, now I can't move until he lets me move again. This is not fair. So again, little interactivity.
Mm-hmm.
Bit of fun. And now we have apps, which again can randomise because they're a
Technology.
program, thankfully, not just Admiral Agblog, whatever his name was, telling us to freeze every 48 minutes. So, yeah, if you like your pressure and you like it to make you sweat, XCOM the board game probably will make you about as miserable as XCOM the video game.
Well, then it's faithful to its source.
Some say XCOM is one of the few video games, that you can canonically fail your game and be satisfied with your playthrough. Because after 40 hours, the Earth finally just falls to pieces and you're like, well, I'm never doing that again. That is my canonical playthrough. The aliens won.
Yep.
Forget you, Earth. I'm moving to Mars.
Share the love. Follow us on Twitter at Brendo Jem. That's BRENDOJEM.
So yeah, with the introduction of apps and things assisting video games, really those lines are blurring. There are more crossovers between the digital world and board games now. So even if they're not directly video game board games, the worlds of video games and board games are colliding.
Yes. Which might upset some people that want to keep them separate. But I think there is enough out there that you can still enjoy whatever it is that suits your tastes.
Mm-hmm.
So
The real question is, Jem, what do you think would make a good video game board game?
ooh.
With actual little pieces, dice, cards, miniatures, Dragon Age, right?
Yes. Dragon Age would be great, especially Inquisition, because like when you play the game, all the characters have like these. They kind of look like tarot cards versions of them and stuff.
The
So-
artwork on those was
Yeah,
super
it was so cool. And all of them would make really cute figurines, and I would be obsessed with collecting them. And they technically have Dragon Age Dungeons and Dragons sets. There's at least 2 of them.
Well, it's not Dungeons and Dragons per se, but it
It's-
plays similar to it.
Yes,
Yes,
but-
we
and
don't
it
want any
uses-
legal issues.
It's very similar.
Sorry, Wizards
But
of
it's
the
set
Coast.
in the lore of the Dragon Age universe,
Mhm.
which is kind of what I have more knowledge of, to be honest, than proper official Dungeons and Dragons rules.
Oh, don't forget, you're one of the Dragon Age team, based off what you said before. They're going to get you to actually make this board game, so good luck.
Oh, yay. There's a lot of things that could translate well, I think, into board games. Have you got something in mind that you would love?
Well, some video games would translate into existing board games very well. I mean, you take Betrayal at House on the Hill
Mm-hmm.
and put the Until Dawn cast in there.
Yes,
Perfect.
that would
It's
work.
exactly what you need. Same with any sort of... I know there is actually Resident Evil card games, board games coming out in a Kickstarter at the moment for Resident Evil 2.
Mhm.
So I was going to say that when I was thinking of this, but my research proved that it's already being made, so I don't think I can pick that as an answer.
One that would be kind of cute for kids, Pikmin.
That would be fantastic.
All the little Pikmin.
That would actually
and
work
Oliver.
really well because you could explore, similar to these games that we have where you'd flip over your next tile to see what's there. Oh, it's a bug. I can't remember what they're called. Bulb bug. What are they called? Bulborbs. Bulborbs. I'm sure they're called. I don't even know anymore.
It's been too long since
Hashtag
we played.
Bulborb. But that would be awesome. Then you slowly build your army up. You could decide to leave some behind to harvest things or knock down a wall.
Mm-hmm.
You have to sacrifice this amount. You roll the dice to see how well you do in combat.
It's
Oh,
something
I've
you
lost
could-
60 Pikmin, just like the real game.
You could work cooperatively, or you could work competitively. There's different formats you could take. And I think that would be cute enough that it could be appealing to both adults and kids.
Yeah, while we're talking Nintendo, I think a Metroid game with the same sort of campaign style of exploring, because a lot of those Metroid and Castlevania, Guacamelee, all those sort of games are all about getting to areas and not having the skills to get through this thing. So then when you come back, you've got the skill. Unlocking stuff like that would work relatively well in a board game, I think. How about Viva Pinata with actual pinatas with candy?
It would be so expensive. In How I Met Your Mother, Lily's dad, who comes up with like all those terrible board games. I wonder if you could do like a fighter game, but in board game format. So you roll the dice to do damage.
Hadouken!
Yes. I don't know. That seems like maybe too basic, but maybe you could add other layers to it, or other components to give you other goals. Or you could add like a story element, like a lot of fighting games have pretty terrible stories for each character that they tie in, or like one linear story where they introduce all the characters, but they're never usually very compelling. But there's opportunity there.
You know what would be compelling?
What?
A race to find a lost treasure between Nathan Drake and Lara Croft.
That would be awesome.
That could work really well as a board game.
Mm-hmm.
Have like mousetrap chain reaction things and trap good old Nathan Drake in a thing. And you could play as Sully, or you could play as all the other characters. It'd be so cool.
So long as the cards had the wit as the game does, otherwise I think you would lose part of the charm that is Uncharted, because so much comes from the humour in that. Oh, you know what else would work?
What would that be?
Persona Q.
Or any sort of those dungeon
Because you've got the
masters.
dungeon crawlers, and then you've got the blending in during the day bits. But there is potential there, absolutely, to be translated onto tabletop.
You just thought grids,
Yeah.
and you know what I just thought of? Fire Emblem.
Well, yes.
Spectacular.
There are so many games. So I think the sky is the limit. And it makes me happy to know that at least the people that make these board games, for the most part, put in a lot of effort to make them faithful to the source material. So unlike them being made into movies, having a video game turned into a board game is actually a good thing.
Yes, indeed.
Win-win.
Unless you play against Jem, in which case it might be win-win, but she doesn't realise she's actually 1-1.
Oh, you're never going to let me forget that, are you?
Never. Well, if you have any better ideas than us as to what would make a great video game board game, track us down on social media, let us know, and we might even give you a partial credit when we finally make that board game for profit.
How about we just mix all of them into it and make like one giant mashup of every single game?
So it's like Ready Player One, but board game style.
Yes! That would actually be a really good video game.
Imagine getting
Board
the
game.
licensing for all those individual franchises. for
They could
each
no.
individual thing.
What you do is you make it out of like Asian knockoffs, like all those bad versions of things with like slightly misspelt names and
Featuring the Duke Nuke Man and Laura Craft.
with really deformed figures. That would be amazing.
Perfect.
Take it to the bank.
We can just get through any legal
All right.
loophole here.
We need to put a copyright on that idea right now, for reals.
Duke Nuke Man. I love it.
If you have any ideas or any comments or questions for us, hit us up at thegaminglovers.com. You can record a message for us there. Before we wrap up, gaming goals for this week. What are you going to try to achieve, Brendo?
I'm going to give Dark Souls a little bit of my attention, but if it treats me badly, that's it. It's in timeout. I do want to kick Yakuza back on track because, like I've said, I want to play 5, 6, and 0 before Japan. Time's ticking away. I legitimately do not think I'm going to do it. But I'll try and get through at least 2 of that 3. So that's my plans.
Okay.
And Fire Emblem at work. Look at me. I'm a game juggler. And what, may I ask, do you intend to play?
Gee, I wonder. I think probably more Persona 5. And Period Cube. And games on my phone.
What is your eyes on as far as once you're past that chapter in your life? What's
I don't
next?
know. Because I'm scared to start anything too big because we're going to be going overseas soon. And so I think by the time I actually finish Persona 5, because it's such a big game, I don't know if I'll have much of a window to really sink my teeth into anything properly, especially if it's something I've not played before. So I think I'll mull it over, but I'm not going to commit to anything yet.
That's fine. I was just curious.
But if people have suggestions of things that they think, based on games that I've mentioned maybe ad nauseum on this podcast, if you can have any games you think that I should play, recommendations, let us know. I would love to hear them.
Challenges, Dark Souls. Jem would enjoy that. The setting, the lore. She seemed to praise it before, so maybe she should give it a spin.
I can appreciate things. It doesn't mean that I want to play them.
Oh, I don't want to play Dark Souls, but I want to play Dark Souls. Let's wrap this up.
All right, masochistic man. Thanks for joining us on episode number 16 of the Gaming Lovers podcast.
She's been Jem, I've been the Duke Nuke Man, and we will see you next time. Chowski!
Bye, Anara.
Thanks for listening to the Gaming Lovers podcast. For more episodes or to watch some live stream gaming, visit thegaminglovers.com.